and we will go straight forward to our book, which is Al-Mufrad. We'll give about 5 minutes to have any question regarding what we have heard. Any questions? You okay? Can I just have a fan or something? It's a bit warm. Jazakallah khair. Okay, we're left with 3 chapters, by the way, and after that we were left with just the Adab Al-Mufrad on its own. We might add to it another book, we might not, depends, so we'll see inshallah.
Which chapter will have this week?
Hadeeth 197.
Do I go straight into the Hadith now?
Hadith 197.
No, do you have any questions?
I think they will add to the questions. I'll just start straight away.
Okay, sure.
The chapter is actually chapter 99, and the chapter is still talking about the slaves and how to be good to the slave. باب نفقة الرجل على عبده وخادمه صدقة. That is, the expenses that the man does and spend on his slave and his servant is to be counted as a sadaqah. Now,
Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded sadaqah. The man said, I have a dinar. He said, spend it on yourself. The man said, I have another. He said, spend it on your wife. The man said, I have another. He said, spend it on your servant, and then you know best to whom to help.
So the Prophet ﷺ, he commanded to pay sadaqah. It shows us the immaculate reward of paying sadaqah, and also it tells us that the Prophet ﷺ, he was encouraging the companions, and this encouragement should be taken place by the person who is in charge as a leader, or a person who is in charge like a teacher, or a person who is in charge like a da'iyah, to remind the people of the rewards of paying and giving sadaqah. A man, straight away he said, Messenger of Allah, I have a dinar. The dinar is equivalent to 4.25 grams of gold. He said, Messenger of Allah, that means what do I do with it? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, spend it on yourself. You need to be a person strong enough in order to feed the following. Because if you're not strong enough, you'll not be able to give or produce another dinar to your son and to your wife and to your slave. So he said to the Messenger of Allah, okay, I've got another one. He said, then give it to your wife. Another narration, he said, give it to your son. And he put the son before the wife. The reason behind this is that the son is of more need than the wife, because the wife, if she's been divorced, she will marry somebody else and she will have expenses from her other husband. So he said, I've got another one. He said, spend it on your wife. Got another one, he said, spend it on your slave. And this is why the chapter title, on your slave, on your servant. Then after that, you know who is more entitled. Mean it could be some of your relatives or your friends. So this is depending upon who you see is more of deserved for that money which is left after that. So we find that this is the priorities that the Prophet ﷺ has been giving. Now, chapter 100.
Chapter 100, when someone dislikes eating with his slave. 198, Abu Zubayr related that he heard a man ask Jabir about one servant that finished his labor and he. Did the Prophet sallallahu
He's finished what? Sorry?
his labor and
he's finished. He's not, I'm just a translation because I'm not concerned about the talking. He said, Jabir, a man asking Jabir about
when one servant has finished his labor and he, i.e. cooking.
Go on.
Oh, okay. Did the Prophet ﷺ command that the servant be invited? He, radiallahu anhu, said, yes, if one of you dislike having a servant eat with him, he should serve him with some food.
It's finished?
He said, if one of you dislike having his servant eat with him, he should serve him with some food, or give him some food.
Doesn't say give him some food in his hand?
No.
The hadith is finished, yeah?
Yes.
Can you read me 199, please?
199, chapter 101, the master should feed his slave what he feeds himself. 199, Jabir bin Abdullah said that the Prophet ﷺ used to recommend that slaves be well treated and used to say, feed them from what you eat, clothe them from what you wear, and do not inflict punishment on Allah's creation.
Right. Let me just, first of all, correct the translation of 198. That is, Abu Zubayr, he said, I've heard a man asking Jabir about the slave of a man whom had sufficed him the heat of cooking and the agonization of cooking. Did the Prophet ﷺ commanded for him to be called, to be invited? He said yes. If he disliked that this person to eat along with him, then let him give him his food in his hand. That's a very important word, give him his food in his hand. So here, the Prophet ﷺ had commanded us to call the slave to eat along with us. And if this person didn't like to eat along with his slave, not because of arrogance, it's because maybe that, sometimes you don't like to eat with even a person who's not a slave. Maybe because he's not really clean, maybe he does not eat properly, maybe he smells. Okay? It's not because you're arrogant. So he said, if he didn't like to eat along with him, then at least you make sure you give him the ukla, morsel, little food, because the food of the companions were little anyway. So if it's too much, you have to give him too much. Basically, the slave is to be dressed and to be fed according to the status of his master. If his master is rich, then the slave will become rich. And if the master is poor, the slave poor as well. That means it's the same. So he said, if he doesn't like to eat with him for any reason except for arrogance, and let him give him the morsel with his hand to show the humbleness. It's very important that this person, to show the humbleness. And this is the hadith. It's actually encouraging us to purify ourselves, to humble ourselves, and also to respect those who are below us, because it's the master respecting the slave. And also because of that slave, he cooked for you, cooked for his master, you should reward him. So as well, to reward that slave of the agonization that he had taken for the sake of cooking in the heat, and for cause of that as well, the load of work and labor on top of him. 199 is exactly the same. So he says to them, Prophet said, that is, make sure that you are good to those who are in your right possession, meaning to the slaves. Feed them from what you feed yourself. Clothe them from what you clothe yourself, and do not punish the creation of Allah, meaning he's punishing as in painful punishment. No problem if you punish just like the way you punish your children, but the slavery in the minds of the people is straight away a whip or a lash, and lashing the slave and humiliating the slave and putting the slave in dungeons. It's not the case with the Muslim in Islam. It's actually, as I said, if the master is rich, the slave become rich. And they are clothes, same thing, the clothes of the master. You tell me which nation on the face of the earth that would make the slave to dress up like the master. You tell me and I will say to you, you're wrong. There's no other nation. No nation would say that the slave and the master. No way. Even if he bought some clothes and he was able to buy clothes, he cannot put the same clothes as his master. They will kill him, or at least punish him. How dare you to be looking like the master? And you know that we have discussed the hadith before, that those companions that used to walk with his slave, they don't know which one is the slave and which one is the master, because each one has got half of a piece of clothes. Like let's say, for example, it's like a suit, which is brown jacket with brown trousers, and another suit, let's say white jacket, white trouser. You'll find the Sahabi taking white jacket and a brown trouser, whereas the other one has got brown jacket and a white trouser. So I mean half, so he would be equivalent. And even one of the boys, when he saw that, he said to his uncle, to the man who was the master, he said to him, "Uncle, why don't you take the other piece and put it in yourself, take the other piece and give it to him, so you could be, having a matching clothes instead of having like this. So he put his hand on top of the boy. He said, MashaAllah, asked his father, is that your boy? May Allah give him barakah. But I would rather give him now in the dunya, rather than he will take from me on the hereafter. I will give him in this dunya, rather than he will take from me if I'm unjust to him in the hereafter. Because the Prophet said, give them from what you have. If you have food, give them the same food. If you have clothes, give them the same clothes. Look at that. Now, chapter 102.
Chapter 102. Should a man's servant sit with him when he eats? Hadeeth 200. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when one of your servants bring you food, you should ask him to sit with you, and if he does not accept that, then you should serve him some food.
It's exact again. It is the mannerhood of prophethood and Islam. This is the manners that he to sit down, but sometimes a slave, he's shy or he's respecting his master. He doesn't want to sit with him. If he doesn't want to sit with him, it says that let him give him some of that food. Give him some of that food. 201.
201. Abu
Mahdura
said, I was sitting with Umar radiallahu anhu when Safwan bin Umayyah brought in a platter which some people carried in a cloth. They put it down in front of Umar, who then invited some poor people and some slaves of the people around him. They ate with him. Then he said, may Allah curse the people who dislike having their slaves eat with them. Safwan said, by Allah, we do not dislike them, but we prefer ourselves to them. By Allah, we do not find good food we ourselves can eat, also feed them with.
Right. Here Abu Mahdura narrates that I was sitting with Umar radiallahu anhu. Safwan ibn Umayyah is from the Arabs who embraced Islam after the Battle of Hunayn, not just after the repossession of Mecca. There was a battle. Then after the Battle of Hunayn, the Prophet ﷺ, he had borrowed actually from him some shields for the Battle of Hunayn, and even he said to the Prophet of Allah, those shields are going to be a borrow, that you're going to pay it back, or you're going to confiscate it, and that's it. If it's gone, it's gone. He said, no, we will pay it back. When he got back, Prophet of Allah, he did not just give him his 30 shields which he borrowed from him, but actually he gave him camels, the value of camels, to the extent that this person, he said to the Prophet of Allah, Messenger of Allah, there was nobody more hated to my heart than yourself, and Allah made you now at the moment you are the best and dearest person to my heart. There was no religion more hated to my heart more than the religion of Islam, and it is now the most beloved religion to my heart. Safwan ibn Umayyah, he went to his people and he said, this man, Muhammad ﷺ, is giving such a giving that he does not fear poverty. He gives a lot of things. Safwan ibn Umayyah, yet because he embraced Islam at the end, and because that he was, from the Arab and the Arabs, and there was some sort of harshness in him as well, he brought a big massive pot which has got tharid, nice food, and he was carrying it, and then he put it before Umar radiallahu anhu, in front of Umar. So Umar, regardless whether he's a Khalifa or not a Khalifa, he's down to earth. He calls all those people who are in need, those people who are slaves, not just in need as well, slaves, and they have eaten along with him to show that Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu, how down he's a Khalifa. Imagine the leader is eating with his own servant. No way it can happen. His servant eats along with the king. Now that's not a servant, that is a slave. Different between slave and a servant. Slave does not take wages. Doesn't, for example, he's working from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock and then he goes home. No, his home is his master. He stays there 24 hours. You could call him at any time. Right, so he says that he had eaten with him, and then he said, may Allah disgrace. I wouldn't say curse, because lahallahu qawman, it's like a disgrace. So he said disgrace to those, insultation rather than cursing. Insultation to those people who find themselves that they can't eat along with their slaves. Safwan, he said, by Allah, we don't really dislike to eat along with them. Yes, we give preference to ourselves over them, but we don't find good food anyway to feed ourselves and feed them. It shows us as well with the companions. They are down to earth as well. They haven't got that much money and they are poor. Even Safwan, he had lots of money. He had lost it as well. It looks like at the time of Umar al-Khattab, he did not have that much money with him. 103 to 102, please.
Chapter 103, on the slave is sincere to his master. Abdullah bin Umar anhu said that the Messenger of Allah said, when the slave is sincere to his master and is also assiduous in worship of his Lord, he has a double reward.
Right, so if the person is, this is the chapter which is if the person is sincere advising his master, sincere to his master. And the hadith says that if the slave had been sincere, and sincerity here means that is to rectify the person's situation in the best of ways, giving the sincerity, giving him an advice. If he is sincere to his master and also he is good in the worship to his Lord, because from the good worship to his Lord is to be sincere to his master, then he has got double reward. فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ مَرَّتَيْنِ. Now this tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a double reward if you do a double obligatory act. It was said by the scholars that this hadith means if the person has two commands, two obligations, that is, obligation to be obedient to his Lord in his ibadah, and the obligation of obedient and obey as well his master, as long as he's enjoining good and forbidding evil, then if he has done both of them, he will have the double the reward. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the reward of fulfilling the obedience to his master, because it is part of his obedience himself. And also he says that, this is scholars, because of that, any person who has any double obligatory and he's done both of them, then he will have the double reward. Like for example, a person who's got salah and zakat, that's both of them, will go a double reward. As Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, he says, it looks like because the slave, he is in hardship and that's why he gets double reward. Because of the hardship that he does, the hardship is just on him, the hardship is in serving his master, that's why he gets the double reward. And also it means, if a person has double reward obligations and he did not do them, and he might get, because of his disobedience, okay, double sin, or more than one sin, or double punishment. Allahu ta'ala a'lam. Now
203. Saleh bin Hayy narrated, a man said to Amir bin Shabi, Abu Umayyad, we say that when a man frees his Walid, then marries her, he is like the one who rides his camel. Amir said, Abu Burda related to me from his father that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to them, three have a double reward. A person from among the people of the book who believes in his prophet and then believes in Muhammad has two rewards. Likewise the slave who carries out the due of Allah and the due of his master. And the man who has a slave girl with whom he has intercourse and whom he teaches well, instructs well and frees her and marries her, that man has two rewards. Amir said, we have related this hadith to you for nothing, to learn even minor points people need to journey to Medina.
Nasha. So here Abu Musa al-Ash'ari says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, ثَلَاثَةٌ لَهُمْ أَجْرًا. Three people have double reward. Three types of people. A man, a person who was from the people of the book, believed in his prophet, and then he believed in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That means he had lived to see Islam, and while he was Christian, believing in his prophet Isa alayhi salam, or a Jewish, believing in Musa alayhi salam, or whatever, he believed in his prophet, and each prophet had taken the covenant before his Lord that when he conveys the message, to tell the people that if the Prophet of Allah Muhammad comes, he has to believe in him. This is an oath which all the prophets had said before the Lord. That is, they will convey to their own people that once the Prophet of Allah Muhammad is out, that is all of them to believe in the Prophet of Allah. Because he had believed in his Prophet, and then the Prophet of Allah Muhammad ﷺ came on his time, and or he was in the time of Islam, he believed in the Prophet Muhammad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees for him a double reward. Why? Because to switch from one Prophet to another is not really simple. Because you are believing in your Prophet. Now to leave your whims and desire and to fight the shaitan which is there to tell you keep to that belief, and to say no, this is the continuation of the message of my Prophet, and to believe in the Prophet Muhammad to be the Prophet of Allah, that is a big switch, and that is why you get a double reward. The second one, he says, that is a person who is a slave and he had fulfilled his duty towards Allah and his duties towards his masters. So this person, because like we said in the previous hadith, he had made 2 obligations, so he gets double reward. And the third one, which is a man who's got a slave woman whom he had intercourse, because he could have intercourse without marriage to her, but yet he taught her in a way which is the best, the kindness. He was good to her, he was not being harsh in the way that he punishes her or the way he speaks to her, but he had admonished her properly, he disciplined her in the right manner. And then after that, after he taught her what she needs to be taught, then he frees her. And after he freed her, when he freed her, he married her. Not he married his own, because you see, you're not allowed to purchase your own sadaqah. So if somebody, for example, gave his laptop as a sadaqah, he's not allowed to go and buy it, because that is actually, it's a way of manipulating. It's a manipulative act. So even if you find it next door, don't buy it. Why? Because you're actually trying to say that this is a sadaqah, alhamdulillah, costs 500, and give it 500, and then you buy it for 100, and you think you'll get given 500. So don't be manipulative, don't buy it. Okay? And that's what the Prophet told Umar al-Khattab, don't buy your horse which you're given as a sadaqah. So don't buy your sadaqah. So this person had freed her. He's not marrying her because he wants to evade the sadaqah. No. He's freed her, and afterwards he saw that she is fit to be his wife. No problem, he could marry her. So he freed her. This person, he will have double reward. The reward that he had first of all taught her properly, and the reward of freeing her. So this is a double reward for that person. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Hadith 206, 204 is the same. 205 is the same. So we go to 106.
Okay, chapter 104, the slave is a guardian. Hadith 206, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, all of you are shepherds, and all of you are responsible for your flock. The Amir over the people is a shepherd, and he is responsible for his flock. A man is a shepherd of the people of his house, and he is responsible for his flock. A man's slave is a shepherd of his master's property, and he is responsible for it. Each one of you is a shepherd, and each of you is responsible for his flock.
Right, I've heard these words from the Prophet ﷺ. Now, this is hadith of the Prophet of Allah to, you could say, divide this responsibility among the community. So he says, "Kullukum ra'in." All people are to be ra'in. Ra'in is a person who is in charge, a person who's holding responsibility of making sure to observe and preserve and to look after. That's what it means. The responsibility to look after. Kullukum ra'in. Each one of you is to be ra'in. And ra'in is taken from the word ra'a, which is like shepherding or herding the sheep. وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَلَيْهِ. And each one, he will be responsible of what is being put into his custody to look after. So the person who is ra'in is the ones who preserve and observe, and what is being trusted in making sure whatever he is looking after is in the right manner, and to be looked after in the way that he will not be questioned by his Lord why you have fallen short. Then he starts, فَالْأَمِيرُ الَّذِي عَلَى النَّاسِ رَعٍ. He starts with the leadership, which is the major leadership. The Amir, the king, the prince, the president. He is مسؤول. فالأمير راع. Al-Imam راع. The person who got the Khalifa or the Khilafah. He has to be a person who would make sure that his ra'iyah are looked after, making sure that all the harms to be kept away from them. وَرَجُلٌ رَاعٍ عَلَى أَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ. And also the man, the husband, he is to be in charge of the household of his house, in terms of spending, in terms of as well teaching, in terms of guiding, in terms of enjoining good and forbidding evil, in terms of explaining to his family what they need from their religion. Also, وَعَبْدُ الرَّجُلِ, which is the slave. Is that in your hadith you mentioned? The slave of the man is to be as well a ra'i. He is a shepherd as well, and he is in charge and responsible regarding the money of his master, meaning that to observe it, preserve it, and not to waste it. And we find that these days that those servants, they easily can waste the food of their masters. They throw it in the bin, or the money of their masters. They don't look after it, and they're going to be questioned for that. So you could really, that food which is left from your master, if he's rich, you could give it to the poor people. What is left from them is enough to feed a whole province, I would say, especially from those princes and princesses. Those are the ones who have lots of servants. When they have a food, they have a feast, and that whatever is left from the feast, it should be given to the poor people, not to be thrown. So we say to the servant or the slave, make sure that you are looking after this, because you're going to be questioned. And also the woman, the wife, she is in charge of her house, and it means in charge of her house. She makes sure that the food is prepared for her husband, food is prepared for her family. She is actually as well looking after the money and the welfare of her husband, also to teach his children and to guide the girls, especially the girls, because the man is not really capable of knowing more about his daughters than the wife, because the wife, she's got more secrets, she knows the secrets, she's more closer to them. And she should not even she's not allowed to give sadaqah of something that the husband would not allow. So for example, he comes back and he finds no fridge. Where's my fridge? I give it sadaqah. Where's my washing machine? I give it sadaqah. It's not allowed. If he knows, mashallah, her husband is rich, doesn't mind that, no problem. You could give a whole house as a sadaqah if he wants, or the car with his sadaqah. But as I said, she's not to give sadaqah of something that she doesn't know about her husband's approval. She should ask him. Here he says, I've heard these words from the Prophet of Allah. Did you say that in the translation? I've heard this from the Prophet ﷺ. It shows us how the companions, they used to give a great reverence and respect to the words of the Prophet of Allah, and they are very careful in scrutinizing all the words, that to make sure that they come from, that is exactly what the words of the Prophet of Allah. And he said, وَأَحْسِبُ النَّبِي, and I think the Prophet of Allah, he said, وَالرَّجُلُ فِي مَالِ أَبِيهِ, and the son regarding the wealth and the welfare of his father. And here we could see the scrupulence of that narrator, that is not to narrate something which is not sure. He said, "Ahsibu," I might think. So if it's not really that word, I've just said to you, I'm not sure about that. And I remind myself as well with the hadith of that person who narrated the incident that took place between the Prophet of Allah and the Bedouin man who had fever. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, how do you find yourself? He said, ill. He said, that is, la ba's tahur inshallah, it will be purification. Tahur? Humma tafur. Can't be purification. He said, humma tafur. And that narrator said, oh, he said tathur. Even though it's not the words of the Prophet of Allah, he was careful. What did the man he say? Humma tafur means humma, which is fever, boil. Tathur is erupting. Both mean the same, but he's not sure. So they're not really, they are so careful regarding the words of Allah and the Prophet of Allah. They must be very, very careful regarding the words of the Prophet of Allah. So, no, it's not tahur, it's humma tafur or tathur. The Prophet said, let it be then. If you wanted not purification, let it be. Boiling fever on you or erupting fever on you. That's what you want. Because the Bedouins, as I said, they're tough, the way they talk, and rough. Now, so here we find that the hadith talks about the responsibilities being distributed among the community. Now, last one.
207.
207.
Abdullah bin Sa'd.
Is it unauthentic? Go to 108.
Okay.
Chapter, please.
Chapter 105. The one who wished he were a slave. 208. Abu Hurairah radhiallahu anhu said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the Muslim shall perform the due of his master, he has two rewards. And Abu Hurairah added, by the one who has the soul of Abu Hurairah in his hand, if it had not been for jihad in the way of Allah, the Hajj and the dutifulness to your mother, I would wish to die as a slave.
You see, this is the hadith which is repeated. Al-Abdul Muslim, إذا أدى الله حق الله. That is, the slave, if he had done the two duties upon him, that is the rights of Allah and the right of his master, he will have a double reward. We've said that. But here we're concerned about that statement which is related to the chapter title. A person likes to be a slave. Abu Hurairah is a free man, and he was poor. Radiallahu anhu warḍah. So he said, had it been for jihad and hajj, and he means hajj tatawwur, voluntary, and the righteousness of my mother, I would have liked to be dying as a what? As a slave. Now, don't you ever think the Prophet Abu Hurairah is thinking about, oh, because I'm poor, I could go to my master, then the master will give me money. Because remember, the master could be poor as well. The master could be poor. But it means here, because of he started with the hadith, that he's got double reward. And Abu Hurairah is after the what? The rewards. Had it been for the jihad, because if I want to make jihad, I need to have what? Permission. Had it been for the hajj, and hajj needs permission from my master, whether it's obligatory or voluntary. And had it been that I have to be righteous to my mother, and I have to be with my mother all the time, so I had to be permission. Otherwise, I would have been choosing to be what? To die as a slave, you need to be what? As a slave when you're living. That means I would be choosing to be a slave in order to die as a slave. But because of these issues, which are great issues, and a great reward in them, which is the jihad and the hajj, and on top of that, which is the righteousness is to my mother. Because if it's hajj voluntary, is not equivalent to the righteousness of your mother. Righteousness of your mother is what? Compulsory. Jihad could be compulsory, it could be what? Recommended. Which type of jihad? But the righteousness to your mother is what? Compulsory all the time. Had it been for those three things, I would have chosen to be a slave. It shows us, subhanAllah, that how Islam treats a slave in such a way that the person he wishes to be a slave. Whereas in any other sect or any other nations or religion, the slave, he would die to get his freedom. He would die rather than to be a slave. He would just to get freedom. Now, stop here inshallah. And we'll continue next week. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Regarding what we have heard or anything that you want to know about your ibadah. Follow.
Now, I'm just going to ask, just a bit curious, how would someone be a slave in the first place?
How can the person be a slave? A person can be a slave in two ways. First one, which is or original one, which is the war booty. It means when we fight the enemies, not the Muslims, the non-Muslims, in jihad, and then we gain women from them, or children, or men that are into the categories of either we swap them with other prisoners, either we kill them if they need to be killed, or we release them for a return of something, or we release them for a return of nothing, or to slaverize them. So all in one of these categories. You can choose one of these categories. So slaverization comes. Second way is a person slavering, selling himself. And that one is in difference among the scholars, is that right or not? And the only way which is have the consensus of the scholars is through the war booty. And if the slave became a slave, he could be purchased and could be sold. And he will not gain freedom unless his master gave him the freedom. But if the slave had enough means of freeing himself and he wanted mukataba, that means asking his master to purchase himself, to free himself, then he has to make a deal with his master, and his master is obliged is obliged to draw a contract with his slave in order that slave would gain his freedom. And this happened at the time as well of Umar Khattab, where this person, he asked Mukataba, and that man, the master, did not want to, so Umar Khattab, he used his stick to discipline the master. Yes, you have to have a contract with him. So you have to have a contract, and one of those who had contract is Juwayriyah, radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet of Allah, when she was a slave because of the war booty of the Battle of Muraysiyah with one of the companions. I remember his name is Shammas. And then she had mukataba with him. She wanted to free herself. See, she wanted the Prophet of Allah to help her to pay what is in the contract. That means to pay the money which is due. So Prophet of Allah, as soon as he saw it, said, okay, well, I'll give you the money and help you, and I'll marry you. Do you like that? She said, yeah, I like that as well. So he married her, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have Salman al-Farisi, whom he had made mukataba with his master, the Jewish, and he purchased himself, and his price was really high. It was 40 ounces of gold plus 300 palm trees to be planted and already giving dates. That's a lot. Well, he had to accept, and he asked the Prophet ﷺ to help, and the companions, each one bringing 30, 40, 20 stems of palm dates tree, and the Prophet ﷺ said, go and plow the land and don't plant any. And he planted the 300 with his own hand, and each one brought the fruit, which is the dates of it. As for the gold, when the Prophet ﷺ, he had the war booty, he had a golden egg. So he gave it said to him, take that and pay your debts. He said, Messenger, what's he going to do? Just take it. Took it, and Allah put barakah into it, and he paid his 40 ounces and he was freed. Now,
with regards to the slave girl that you could have relationship with, once they become pregnant and they give birth, are they not free?
Does the woman, when she gets pregnant from her master, becomes free? No, she does not. Only if her master died. So if the person, he had intercourse with his slave, and the slave produced a child, that mother is not free whatsoever, but she will be freed and dabar, meaning if the husband died, straight away automatically becomes free. So if the husband, so once there was a companion who had a slave, who had intercourse with her, she brought him a child, and then the wife of that master, she doesn't like that slave. So as soon as the master dies, she said, verily, tomorrow they're going to take you from your ears in the market and sell you. She doesn't like it. Then she was told, no, sorry, she's free. As soon as her husband dies, the master, her child makes her free. But she does not become free, of course, if her master is alive. Now, Fadl.
The woman who came to the Prophet ﷺ and presented herself for marriage, did she not come with a mahram? Is it suitable? Is it allowed for a woman to just come up to a man and
did that woman come with a mahram when she came to the Prophet ﷺ and offered herself for the Prophet of Allah to marry her? That was a question was asked actually today. That could have been as well a very good, powerful proof to support what I said. There was a sister, she's saying that her daughter, she has got no father, and she has as well no stepfather. Also she has no brother, nothing, nobody. Or the only one is uncle, but he's not in this country. And she's been seen one of those agencies, agencies for marriage. And there was a candidate, person to come forward. And she's asking, is it permissible for that daughter of hers to meet the new proposal? That is, without a wali. What he means that he's a mahram here. I said, no, she doesn't need a wali. only the wali to make the marriage, but to meet someone, she only needs to make sure that she is not on her own with him. So if she's got a mother who's old, the one mother young, because that person might like the mother, not the daughter, especially if she's not married. Mother who's old, or more than 3-4 women together, making sure that that person coming just to see the girl and goes. No harm, as long as there is no seclusion, khalwa. Then when she got the answer, she was happy. She phoned me again after that 4 or 5 hours because I was teaching this morning. She says to me that the agency tried to phone you because they want your opinion directly because they don't trust us. And the agency phoned me. And I told them, yes, that's right. She doesn't need a mahram. As long as that's said, the mother is old and so on and so forth. He didn't know that. That makes it in his business better. So that was a proof, actually, what you have just said. That woman, she came without mahram. She came with nobody. As long as not just the Prophet of Allah, was a number of people. And the story says that the Prophet of Allah, he didn't say a word. She stood, looked at her, and just looked down. So a man, he said, Messenger of Allah, if you don't want her, I want her. Khalas, he saw enough. He heard enough. What did he see? What did he hear? He saw a woman dressed up, and he heard, Messenger of Allah, I'm offering myself to you. Those are the words he heard. Then, khalas. Amazing. He didn't say, can I have a chat with you, please? What do you like for cooking? You like curry? I don't like curry. And they end up not marrying each other because one likes curry and the other one doesn't like the curry. What's that? Those things that can really, later on be I mean, they could have overlooked those things. I want to know how high he is. If he's 6 foot something, can't. So 6 foot is the limit. Above 6 foot, they can't marry. Why? Sisters, I'm 6 foot because I'm 5 foot. They have to be 6 foot. So, why is that? Well, why is those things that condition that bring hope to a beautiful marriage? So I said, I'll marry her. And the person who wants to marry her actually, he's got nothing. And the person who got nothing, is not easy for him to get married. Now, she has the right to say no, but she did not. Don't you ever think that this woman, she is worthless to come to offer herself? No. Maybe she didn't have any person to, offer her, because the Prophet of Allah, when he gave her the marriage, he didn't ask, he didn't bring her wali. Do you understand that? That means she didn't have a father. And the Prophet of Allah, he is the messenger, and he is the contractor, and he's the one who is the wali. Because if there's a wali, there is no marriage without wali. Bring your father. So that woman, she had no wali. She came to the Prophet ﷺ. She had a wali. She would have asked her wali to go and ask the Prophet ﷺ to propose. But she had nobody. I said, I'll marry her. Yeah, what do you have? Nothing. Nothing, he said. Go and bring even a ring which is metal, like a metal. But that ring metal is not allowed. It's just like the price of it. I don't have messenger. Clothes, got only mine. If I give it, I've got nothing to put on. Then he said, do you have any Quran? Said, yes, surah, mentioned. Like I make you to marry her with the mahr of surah. It shows us that the mahr is compulsory. Without a mahr shouldn't be, even though that he had nothing, but he had the mahr. And it shows us as well, he did not ask for the verses, because some of the people, I made my daughter to marry on Surah Al-Baqarah. Brother, don't boast about that. It's not right. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he never married himself or his daughters on Baqarah or Ali Imran. No. It's only when that man didn't have anything. They went to the Quran. It's not because so some of the people think this is the Sunnah. It's not. And you're going to stop the girl from marrying because they want money as well. They have to have money and regard, and that money depending upon how rich is the husband. So if the husband is a millionaire, a couple of million, brother, will be enough, inshallah. Because nothing for him is a can of coke. And if it's really, simple man, 200, 500. I don't like this marriage for £1. This is £1. In our country, this £1, 1 dinar, is common. If you have seen people to say to you, the mahar, dinar, run, don't look even back. That 1 dinar is going to bring you disaster. 1 dinar, about 5 kilos of gold, bedrooms, washing machine, the latest ones, fridges, everything. That's 1 dinar, by the way. Well, you take 1 dinar, but the rest is to be what? It's for you and your wife. For me, for my wife, I don't want the latest washing machine. I can't afford it. I can't afford the 5 kilos of gold. I can't. So, rather to go to a person who would say to you, okay, the mahar is 1,000 dinar. Khalas. 1,000, that's it. We'll not ask you anything else. But if it's 1 dinar, 1 dinar has got loss behind it. Run. And I'm telling you from experience. Allah al-Musta'an. Now. Tfadl.
Who says how much the mahar money is? The husband says it or the wife?
The mahar?
Yeah.
The mahar is the husband because he never asked the women, the Prophet ﷺ, how much do you want?
Yes.
He asked him, how much can you afford to give? So, if it's going to be for the people or the women, that's why marriage has been at hold. They don't really go ahead. Because the women, they ask in the family, 5 grand. I don't have 5 grand. This is 5 grand, and then you have to book a hall and night, and you end up with in the 40 grand. True or not? And that's why in Saudi Arabia, the Bilad, which is the land of monotheism, A'udhu Billah, the marriage there is a social boasting. No marriage is less than 200,000. No marriage like this. So the person has to pawn his house, the house of his father, and everything in order to make the marriage, and he will be in debt for the rest of his life. Because they boast. See, the woman, she said, what's your mahar? 25,000 camels, for example. Oh, but 26,000 camels. And even I've seen that in the Bangladeshi community as well. Yeah. I'm sorry to say that, but the biggest mahar I had in my marriage experience is a Bangladeshi. So this is a marriage which I've done in my masjid, and then I said, what is the mahar? He said to me, 25,000. Other 25,000 rupees, whatever the Bangladeshi. It's called taka. He said, 25,000 pounds.
He's a print rate.
Are you sure, brother? You're not being threatened? I was making a joke for it. Are you sure? And I wrote the number before I put it on the contract. Is this 25000? He says, yes. So I said to the sister, the brother, would you like to marry him? And he's offering 25,000 pounds as a mahar. Don't you dare say no. I made the marriage. And I said to the brothers, and he went with his wife. Then later on, about an hour later, a brother comes in, a friend of mine. He says to me, there was 2 couples there. They couldn't find a transport. I said, what? Transport? I thought a Rolls Royce will be waiting for them outside. And then I knew later on that he works in a restaurant as a worker. He's a worker. He can't even afford it. But this has to be done because of the customs. 25,000 pounds, and he's only a simple worker in a shop, in a takeaway. He didn't have a car. My friend gave him a lift. Allah al-Musta'an. I'm sorry, Bangladeshis.
No. Carry on.
And every time I come here, I pass this road, I find that this marriage at least would cost more than 50,000. To rent that car, just to rent it an hour, by the hour, 400, 500, 600 pounds for an hour. Look how much extravagance in that. Allahu Musta'an. We're not talking rich people, lots of people, even in our countries. Now, Tfadal.
Can I refuse an invitation from invited someone?
Can I refuse an invitation? Yes, you can. Any invitation which has something that would displease Allah, like music, pictures, extravagance, anything like this, you are allowed to do that. But if it hasn't got it, you're not allowed to refuse. because it will bring hatred amongst the people and will grudge, and it will actually break the community into pieces. So we'd say to the person, Prophet ﷺ, if you've been invited, then you have to respond. But companions, they would never respond to an invitation which involved haram. So if there's a haram there, don't go. A person today is telling me that one of his relatives, he died, millionaire. He said, I'm not going to go to his funeral. Then he was asked, because he was belonging to a sect called Ahbash. You know Ahbash? Habashi. Even if his cousin, I'm not going to go. Is it alright? Yes, rightly so. Because the Habashis, they make takfir upon Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, tadlil upon Shaykh ibn Baz, al-Albani, the Habashis, a'udhu billah. I don't want to go into that sect, but this sect is one of the deviant sects, as our Shaykh had said. Allahu a'lam. جزاكم الله خير for listening. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Next week,